Welcome back, parents. I am super excited for the guests that we have on our show today. Listen, if you ask yourself on the regular, like, man, am I doing the right thing by sending my kid to this school or continuing to homeschool? Or is homeschooling even an option for me? What about college for my kids? Should we even think about college these days? If you have those kinds of questions swirling around your brain, it's normal, and this episode is going to deeply serve you. Today on the show, I've got a guest that I've been wanting to have on the show since we opened in June of 2022. So I'm so glad to introduce Matt Beaudreau. Welcome to the show, Matt.
What an honor, my friend. You're talking about all my favorite stuff right there. So we'll have some fun. It's an honor to be here with you.
Absolutely. Guys, I got to give you a little bit of Matt's street cred. And I know he's a humble man, but I'm just going to list it off because he's been out there doing some really awesome things in the way of coaching, consulting, and education. And so you need to know about it. So Matt has been a keynote speaker, a consultant, and a coach to multiple organizations around the world. His clients have ranged everywhere from Wells Fargo to Honeywell, Lockheed Martin, Cedars-Sinai, and even the United States Air Force. Matt has a bit of a reputation as a provocative thought leader in educational and personal development practices. He's a two-time featured TEDx speaker, and he was named Corporate Trainer of the Year at Stanford University. Matt has spoken to over 250,000 people across the world. And in 2017, Matt founded a school. It's called the Acton Academy Placer School. And this is a unique type of a school that I'll let Matt speak to a little bit later. But since then, he's helped open multiple campuses around the world. He has also developed a coaching program for young men. And I'm proud to say that one of my little young heroes, Parker, who is now 17, has gone through Matt's program, Apogee Strong. So he co-designed that with Tim Kennedy, and it's a great mentorship program designed for young men from 12 to 22. So not only that, but now, Matt, you have come up with this Apogee Strong Dads program, and you've got an Essential 11 podcast. Like, you are just out there tearing it up when it comes to helping parents, helping men and dads do this great thing that we are charged with.
I'll tell you. And now we got the women's program on the way. Oh, and Tim and I are launching another 100 schools, K through 12 campuses under the Apogee umbrella in 2024. So yes, ma'am, the ball keeps rolling. So and what a blessing to be able to do all that.
Well, goodness, I take us back. Like, tell us first of all a little bit about your own family. I'm married and have 3 kids, and we were talking on the show before. Josh and I just celebrated 19 years of marriage, so we've been at this for a while. What about you and your wife?
So rad, man. That's awesome. Yeah, my beautiful wife and I have been together for 18 years. We'll be married 15 years here next month. And we've got 3 young heroes as well. So my girls are 12 and 10, and my young man is 7. So
Love it.
It's the best. And we're all born, all of us, my wife and I are both born and raised California. We've been in California for, me, I'd been there for 42 years. My wife, 30 some odd years. And, but we recently moved about 18 months ago, moved to a farm out here in North Carolina. So we're in the mountains of North Carolina now and raising the family on a farm, and the most blessed man on the planet, man. They're absolute superhumans.
Wow, what a change going from city life in California to farm life in the mountains of North Carolina.
Yes, ma'am. It's about 180 degrees shift, but what an adventure, and really honored that not only was my wife super excited about it, but my kids were too, very much so. And so it's been an amazing adventure.
Awesome. I have to ask, was there some impetus for this move, like something sudden that happened, or was it just something you had thought about over time?
It's a good question. So, in the speaking world, I'd gotten to, I've spoken in every state and been in multiple countries. And so we always had a number of places that were kind of a short list of like, eventually we'd go here. My wife and I, even though born and raised in California, neither of us were ever huge California fans. We loved a lot of people there and didn't agree with a lot of things there as well. And but we had built, the businesses and built the campuses to where they didn't need me present anymore. So we had the
Yes.
freedom, right? We had the opportunity to do that, and we weren't actively necessarily looking, but it was the property itself. North Carolina was one of the states that was on our short list, and it was a friend of mine who's an old CAA guy who was like, "Hey, by the way, you're gonna love this farm. Not only is it provide self sufficiency, but there's security up and down the mountain. There's multiple like it was the opportunity. So I saw all the things that came with it, and the fact that the owners were gonna stay for 45 days to show the new owners how to operate everything on the farm, including the business that was attached to it, providing food to local restaurants. And like they were showing us all of those things. And I'm like, he sent that to me. And I'm like, hey, honey, I think I have to fly out tomorrow to North Carolina. And so I literally flew out the next day, came out to take a look, spent like 4 or 5 hours out here with the previous owners and just went, man, I think this might be the deal. So yeah, got a hold of my wife and my kids and they were all like, yeah, let's go. Let's go right now. We're
Wow.
ready. Yep.
And like a great leader and a good man, you're like, honey, this is like, I know this is different and this is something that, we got to jump on.
For sure. And the good thing is it wasn't something that was being, I don't feel like I feel like I've learned the lesson not to just spring something on my wife that's been ruminating, right? It's like let's have the conversations prior to and bring her along so that when that is something even that big is presented, she's like, "Well, yeah, because we've talked about this and this. Cool. That sounds great. It sounds aligned with where we know we want to go as a family."
Absolutely. It sounds like you had some prep time and had discerned like what would really get us to move, right? Like what
Yes, ma'am.
would all
Yes,
have
ma'am.
to come together. And the thing
That's
I love
exactly
about what you're sharing too is that, because you homeschool, that's
right.
that's probably not one of those things that has, it holds you back from these types of things. I know
That's
it's a
right.
freedom,
We
right?
don't have to have that's right. We don't have to have the conversation. Now I was going to say we don't have to have the conversation of like, "Oh, but are the schools good in that area? How do we disenroll?" Like we didn't have to worry about that, right? Now,
Yes.
the interesting school part was the fact that my kids did go to school when we were in California, but they went to a school that I built. They went to a school that I created, right? And so my kids had only ever been to a school that I'd created. So that was an interesting thing was like, "Hey, you're going to leave the school that at the deepest level, I created just for you. Yes, I created it for everybody else too, but they were the primary reason, right?" And so that was a
Wow.
little interesting. But the school was going to remain. It was still going to serve, hundreds of families throughout that part of California. Like that's it. I wanted to help more and more humans, and that was still staying there. Nothing, changed with that. And my young heroes had learned so much through that, including how to be self-directed, how to really drive they had already kind of gone over that hump, and so
Mhm.
when I was like, hey, so this is what this would look like going out to the farm and here's how this would work, they were like, cool, sounds like an adventure, like let's go.
Yes, they weren't dependent on kind of the structure of a teacher telling them what to do at all different times because that's not how your school is set up, right? You talk about it being self-directed and this
Mm,
Socratic method where you're asking open-ended questions and
right, and it's very experiential. They're trying things. We'll start with a desired outcome and then let them scaffold things backwards, right? Where the best way I can I described it the other day. I was on a show and I said, if somebody had no interest in mechanics, because that's something I never grew up being interested in, to be truthful. But we went, okay, kids, everybody's got to learn. Here's a socket wrench. Let me give you the history of socket wrenches. This is what a socket wrench is. Here's the different sizes. Like nobody cares. But if we take these kids and we go, hey man, we're going to go build a rocket that we're going to shoot off. And by the way, that rocket runs with this engine and we're going to test all these fuels and we're just going to compete and like try to shoot rockets into the air and see how cool, like, oh, sweet. Sounds good. Okay, cool. So we got to go in. We got to get this engine ready. We got to fix this engine. This part right here is not very tight. Cool. What do we need to do? I don't, hey, this is a socket wrench. Like, watch what this will do. And we're going to, oh, okay, cool. All right. So if I need that socket wrench, I'll go get it. Right. That's different when you're starting with
yes.
the end in mind and it's something exciting and there's an outcome you're going for. You start working towards the outcome and then you actually scaffold in the pieces afterwards, right? We talk about it being fire aim ready. That's how learning actually works.
Mm.
You can prep all you want. I can prep. I now have, I've started and I have multiple businesses, but I didn't grow up as an entrepreneur. I didn't have any entrepreneurs in the family. So I was confused for a long time too of going, okay, well, what is all the information I need to consume first? What books do I need to read? And what courses do I need to take? And what? No, no. You need to start the business first.
Figure it out along the way.
Figure it out along the way. That's right. And
Love
then
it.
go, okay, where do I know, what knowledge do I need right now to go to this next step, to go to this next part? That's how the design actually works. Humans are designed that way. And it's not, I understand the concept of, and I love Tony Wagner, who's a friend of mine, professor at Harvard. And I get everybody has the different learning styles. They're not different learning styles. There's different preferences. There's one learning style. Humans are designed to do
Yes.
first and foremost.
Yes.
It's always the learning style.
Man, we always talk about, families of character, just when you're developing the character of a child, you
Mhm.
can't just teach them. You can't just give them the knowledge and run your mouth as a parent, you need to be respectful. You have to engage their will, or right, you'll have backlash and rebellion and all of this. And that's exactly to your point, because we
Yeah,
were designed to engage with things, to do things, to engage our will and practice these things.
bingo. That's exactly it. I made a comment in one of the TEDx's. I started talking about my son who wanted to do jujitsu, and I said, well, we can take the academic route, and the academic route would be, okay, great. You need to study the history of jujitsu. I'm going to tell you about all the best jujitsu players of all time. I'm gonna give you a chart of all the moves. Maybe we'll watch some videos around it. You're going to take a multiple choice test on it. Maybe you'll go create a trifold board about jujitsu and the history, and then we're going to tell you you're really good at jujitsu now. Of course not.
Right.
Or the other option is you go get on the mat and you work with somebody who is a master of jiu-jitsu, and you suck for a long time. But you
Yes.
slowly get better and you slowly get a little better and you get a little better. Now all of a sudden maybe you're proficient in jiu-jitsu, right? And then now all of a sudden maybe you're interested actually in the history of it. And now you can learn some of the moves via video or book because you have context in which to root it to. Because I've actually been able to roll. Wait, I was in that position and I didn't know what to do. But if I had done that, so right now, all of that stuff makes sense because you have
Yes.
experience to root it to. So again, that's the human design, which is a biggest part of my beef with school is that we don't worry about the human design. We worry about the school design, right? And we're trying to shove people into that. It's just not how we're created, man. So, and that's never an attack on people who operate in that system. It's never an attack on academics, people who are academics um, at all. But the truth still remains. That's how we're designed to learn. And you're in a system that's not designed for people.
Yes. So talk to us a little bit about your educate or your experience kind
Yeah.
of being in schools. You were a teacher, an administrator, right? So you can speak from this place because you have worked in these places.
Man, I've done well in these places too, right? So, I always tell people my journey into being a career educator, which I definition of terms matters. Socrates says the beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. And so I define educator and people will go, okay, he's an educator, but people will think teacher.
Mm,
I differentiate those. I say a teacher is one thing and an educator is a completely different one. I don't think teaching and educating are the same. So I say I'm a career educator. But that I tell people my journey started when I was 4 in that, because I remember being 4, being in a kindergarten classroom and looking around at the way they had grouped us. And I remember specifically being in the red group at the red table, and we were going to be doing a reading exercise. And I remember looking around going, oh, okay, well, that group over there, they need the most help with reading. They need the next amount of help. They need a little bit less help than them. This is the table of all of the people they think need the least amount of help on reading. Oh, they're categorizing us based on how well they think we're going to be able to do this next thing. I remember seeing the pattern
wow.
very early on. And by about 7 or 8, I had figured out the game of school. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be really good at this game just because I know the game. I'm not super smart. I just know the game. I can
Sure.
see this. So I got straight A's all through school. I got straight A's all through college. I got straight, and I never tried, and it's because I just figured out the game of school. But once I graduated and I had to graduate to the game of life, I was like, and now what?
Oh.
I've got really good at this game. This is not the same game. Right. So there was that background there. Now, ultimately, I did end up at Stanford University through a couple different odd jobs. I ended up at Stanford and I started seeing the game from another perspective. I started seeing young people who were, they had their OChem and they're really smart and they're doing really good, but they're miserable. They had bad relationships. They weren't getting along with their parents. They didn't know how to write a check for their tuition when they came in. They're like, we don't know how to do this, and I'm like, but you have an OChem. Like, this is not hard. Right. So I started seeing this whole thing. I also started seeing the disconnect in terms of the game of college admissions, not
Mm.
the meritocracy everybody thinks it is. Very, very often it's not at all what people think it is. So started seeing all that naively. I'm like, well, cool. Now I know my calling. I'm going to go ahead and fix it from the inside out. So I did become a public school teacher. And I was that creatively insubordinate public school teacher. And so then seeing the handcuffs there, I'm like, I'll go fix this. I'll be the public school administrator. Wait, this is more about money and power and politics. We're not talking about the kids at all.
Mm.
Naively, I'm going to go to private school. Well, most private schools look just like public school. It's not much different. The design isn't much different. So I was a private school teacher, private school administrator. And so yes, so I have all of that background, which is why I left all of those things to start schools my kids could go to.
And tell us, I mean, aside from categorizing, like you explained in kindergarten,
Yeah.
and then what you explained with the Acton schools, which are,
Mhm.
engage with the end in mind and get
Mhm.
experiential. I mean, if there are parents listening that have their kids in public schools, I mean, what
Mhm.
are some other differences or things that you saw from the inside that were
Yeah.
just like blowing your mind, or like, what, this can't happen?
Well, the biggest turning point went with me. I always tell people, if you are either curious enough or dumb enough to ask good questions, the problem will end up being you'll have to be brave enough to sit with those answers. That's the
Ooh.
problem that a lot of people don't like to tackle. They don't want to be brave enough with the answers. So when you ask the question, which is what I did, and again, I don't know if it was curiosity or I was a moron, it was probably both, but I asked the question, why does school look like this? When I've got young people here who are brilliant, but they're being told when they get home by their parents who have 209 tattooed across their neck that they got to get out and start selling drugs. And I'm like, hey, no, here's what we're going to do. And I'm working with these young guys and I'm like, let's start building this. Let's start giving you real opportunities to get out. We're going to start building a business. We're going to start. And the school's going, no, they need algebra because that's how we get our funding. I'm like, no, that's not what this young guy needs. Maybe
Right.
somebody else needs some help. He doesn't, right? So why are we doing this? And hey, by the way, the world is continuing to change. School looks the same. Like, what is going on? So when I really started going down that rabbit hole of how school was designed and what it was designed for, I came to the realization that it was never designed based on human development. It was designed for mass control of a population. That is
Mm.
the design of school. It was a Prussian model designed for the Industrial Revolution to get people who will obey orders, not question the government, be smart enough to follow directions, but not curious enough and not tapped in enough to their ingenuity to try to buck the status quo. That's what it's ultimately designed for. And so the entire structure is meant to break us down. And so the word that I eventually have come to, and I know people get mad about this because it implies, especially if they've been involved in it as a teacher or they're sending their kids there, it implies that they are a certain thing. And I'm not doing that at all. But it's slavery. It's built for slavery. Period.
Mm.
It's built to enslave your mind. And it's a slavery that you often don't leave, and it turns out to be this religion that you then perpetuate for your own kids, even when you logically see the faults of it, right? So I had to come to that conclusion, and then I had to come to terms with what I wanted to do with that. And once I came to those terms, it was like, well, I'm not going to perpetuate it. I'm going to create something vastly different. So when we're understanding that foundation, the schools that we are building, and I built them, I built many under the Acton umbrella, and now Tim and I are launching, the Apogee versions, which are very similar, but with some other things that we wanted to do differently as well. physiology matters, physical fitness matters. We talk about mental health for young people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can't talk about mental health if you're not going to talk about physical health. Physical health is the precursor for mental health, right?
You
So
know it.
that's it. So getting them physically active, making sure they have the opportunity to, to train, to lift weights, to run, to, get into martial arts, like whatever that looks like, physical activity is a non-negotiable. Understanding their physiology too, in terms of everything, like the nutrition, their body language, not, shooting them up and jabbing them up and giving them a bunch of methamphetamines, to try to fix a so-called deficiency of some sort or neurological issue. We want to stay away from all that garbage. We're going to be very open about that. Socratic conversations, so they understand how to think, not what to think, how to think. They understand how to articulate what it is that they believe and why they believe it. They can genuinely listen to another side that may disagree, and they can weigh the evidence and even be brave enough to change their mind if better evidence is presented. It's called civil discourse. Adults used to be able to do it.
Yes.
Right. So, taking on big projects with the end in mind, so very experiential, taking on massive responsibility too. So, older heroes operating with younger heroes side by side in a mentorship fashion on campus. Heroes taking on jobs ranging from greeting families to giving tours to janitorial to being the chefs on campus to anything and everything. They're learning to run the business, but they're also starting their own businesses. Every one of our students starts their own business or takes a business into perpetuity, not because we think everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, but because of the skills you learn in doing it. Internships and apprenticeships, very heavy in those, so people can make real decisions. I have so many young people who come to me and they're like, well, I'm a nurse and I decided that when I was young because I heard that nurses make good money and that it's always in demand. But now I'm in debt and I hate the job, but I guess that's what I do now because they never actually tried it. They don't know.
No,
Right. So
exactly.
internships, apprenticeships. So, and then, one of the other things in the apogee side of things is schools like to talk about teaching the whole child. Well, part of that whole child are the parents who are leading them. So
Mm.
if we're not pouring into the parents and making sure the parents are on a journey as well, making sure the parents are moving forward, well, then we're not actually teaching the whole child. So having, a community for the parents to move forward as well. So yeah,
Yes,
it's that's getting into.
that just got the hair on my arm standing up right now when you said that, like the whole child, if you are
Yeah,
missing reaching the parents and engaging the parents in
yeah,
school, which
yeah,
is what my experience was when we had
sure.
kids in public school, was that we weren't part of it. It was,
Hmm.
you stand back here, you have to buzz and in to get in. There was no community involved
Correct.
there. It was different at a
Correct.
private school that our kids went to for a while, but um
But even that, a lot of times, because again, I had the private and public experience, and a lot of times we'd be like, okay, private school parents, we want you, quote unquote, involved. But again, definition of terms. So if involved means you're PTA and you're going to be on the field trips, and we also want you to, as we're setting up the classrooms, like come volunteer to set up the classrooms, that's one thing. I'm
different.
talking about actually making sure the parents are growing themselves, like
Yes.
they're getting healthier, their relationships are getting better, they're learning how to make more money or give more money, and like they're learning that stuff, they're getting stronger spiritually, that's what I'm talking about. They're growing, so their mission isn't just being the overlord of their child's life, it is a co-traveler on this journey of growth.
Yes, and you're so right. And oftentimes, I think, even in private schools, we can be outsourcing the development of our child
Yes,
by
ma'am.
dropping them off. And I was guilty of this. I mean, we thought, hey, this is a private school, it's got a Christian, background to it. So, like, this is good. Like, they're getting good stuff here. Well, what that
Hmm.
actually meant for us, what we realized when we backed out of it was because we were expecting that at the school, we
Hmm.
just like unhooked at home from it. It was like, well, they get this all day for 8 hours. And so we need to feed them. We need to clothe them. We need to make sure they have baths every night, do their little 20 minutes of reading. I mean, we got in the cycle and we were just, burn and churn. It was like three hots and a cot. They might as well be in a little prison at home because the small amount of time they spent with us was we
Hmm.
were just, providing some nutrition and sleep and get them up
Mm-hmm.
and do it again. And
Mm-hmm.
once we pulled out of that, Josh and I just started engaging our kids. Everything became a learning experience.
Yep.
Everything we did when we just decided to homeschool was like,
Yep.
throw the books out. Man, when
Yep.
we're going to the store, we're talking about like sales on items, and why does this fruit look different from this one? Because this one has got so many chemicals in it to preserve
Right.
it. This is natural to look ugly, you know? Like,
Totally. And it's so strange. So this speaks to the power of the religion of schooling, right? And I call it a cult. I call it America's biggest cult, and really one of the largest cults in the world. It's schooling. It's our emotional attachment to that religion. Isn't it interesting that what you just described is, hey, the best way for a human to get good at life is to live life. That
yes.
I mean, that's really what you just described. It's like, okay, well, you just live it. So I tell parents, when I'm telling parents, I'm like, you're the best way to educate your children is to perpetually educate yourself and then just bring them along with everything that you're doing. And
Yes.
people are like, but it can't be that simple. I'm like, no, that is the design. That is it. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else that you're doing is you're trying to force something else into this vessel, and you're doing it in a game that's not actually the game they're going to play. It's so logical, but the emotional attachment to school just gets us. And it's a fascinating thing. So that's really, as an educator, that's the majority of my job and conversations, is to get people to realize it's actually pretty simple.
Yes, and I love how you teach the truth in love, because you could just be like, you got to get these people out of here. You don't know what's happening to your child. You're like, no, we'll spend a little bit of time letting you know what is truly happening in the school, because you got to
Sure.
be educated. You have to be aware. But then
Yep.
we're going to spend a majority of the time talking about what's possible, right? A
Yes.
different
That's
way, a
it.
better way. And there's
That's
multiple
it.
different ways, right?
There's a bunch of ways, and that's what's great, right? But you're not going to see all those ways, and that's what most people don't realize, there are options. It's
Yes.
like growing up thinking there's only a couple of different foods that you're allowed to eat, and we're like, hey man, great. By the way, there's a bunch of other stuff over here that's worth trying, so maybe you should check it out. Uh,
Yes.
Check it out, see what you like, because there's a lot of different ways to stay fed, and so those are the conversations, and sometimes we got to come a little more harsh, and then sometimes you got to have a little soft hand, but we always have empathy and understand, because there's this old saying by Yodorovsky, who says, birds born in a cage think flying is an illness.
Oh,
Well, the problem is we were all born in that cage. We were all born into that cage of schooling. We were born into
yes.
that. That's just a thing you do. It's this. So we're all born in that. So I understand that. And I understand the mental leap that some people are having to take. I understand sometimes the first time they talk to me or they hear me speak or whatever, they're like, okay, this crushes my worldview a little bit. And I'm mad at you for that. Not
Ooh.
anybody else that ever lied or built it. I'm actually angry at you. And I'm okay with that. And I don't expect anybody to agree with me or think like me, but I always hope people will think. And so I got to come at it from different ways so that it hits different people, so that they'll sit back and, again, be curious enough to ask those questions. And then I hope with the other posts or conversations or talks, it fuels them enough to be brave enough to sit with those answers.
Well, that's what your approach and, your style has done for Josh and I. We started listening to your podcast, Ryan
Mm-hmm.
Mickler, a couple years ago, and just listening over time, and then
Mm-hmm.
decided, just there's one day that we just decided, you know what? We're supposed to sign these kids up for school again for next year, and I think we're just going to try to homeschool. And so when people ask us, like, so did you figure it all out and get the curriculum mapped out and like figure out when you were going to test them and get all that arranged before you took the plunge? We were like, that is how we operate with most things. And we didn't this time. We just said yes and then allowed ourselves to go with the process. And it has been beautiful. It has been anxiety provoking. It has been like so liberating and freeing. And I'm like never going back. You know what
Good
I'm
for you.
saying?
Oh, I know what you're saying. I mean, it becomes one of those. We have about 250, I guess, homeschool families right now that we take through home education as well. We're building these schools, but we also have families that are like, no, we don't want. We want to home educate. Cool. So we got a couple hundred that we bring through this, and And I tell them, like, at some point, you're going to get to the point where you go, wait a second. Now I understand. It's really simple. I'm not going back. And I also kind of don't need to talk to you anymore. And
Yeah,
I that's where I want them to be. You know, I hope
exactly.
we have a relationship enough where we can just still remain in contact and remain friends, but I don't want them to need me. It's like parenting, right? You want to
Yes.
have your kids ultimately be able to be fully self-sufficient, go get it, like rock and roll. Now I understand. Also, I still want to have the relationship. Like that's how it is. So we've had so many of these families. That's exactly what you said. You know, they get to that point where they're like, oh, man, and once you get there, it's like you can't unsee it. You would never do it any other way because what you're tapping into is your God-given freedom and sovereignty.
Mm,
You're tapping in to the factory setting, right? It's that
yes.
factory setting where all these other apps and all this other trash, all this other garbage has been gone on and it's slowed down your operating system. And so, you know, our what we have found as our team is like as educators, we're going, okay, how do we get a hold of young people early so we can preserve those factory settings? It's just the God-given design. We're not doing anything to them. We're just preserving that God-given design. And then for the adults, it's usually how do we? It's addition by subtraction. How do we pull out all the extra garbage to get them back to factory settings, right? And it's getting everybody to kind of take those routes.
Yes. Well, you're doing an awesome job at it. I mean,
Thank you. It's an honor to be able to even try, right?
yeah.
Like like what a gift to be able to spend, our lives just working with amazing human beings to get them to remember how amazing they are by design and
Yes, to
just
understand their worth and what they're capable of. I mean, I believe that we were chosen to be the parents of these children for a
yes.
reason, and we have within us everything it takes to
Mhm.
raise them to be confident and to thrive out there and not to lose their morals and their values. Right? But
Correct.
sometimes I think as parents, like you said, we get so spun up in the culture or this way of thinking that we lose touch with that. We start thinking, oh, my kids need a therapist. I can't
Mhm.
do this. I'm broke down. I'm not cut out to even you know parent these kids. And it's like, yeah, you really are. You just have to kind of shut out the noise and
Yeah.
find people who have gone before you and have done this and can coach you back to that place where you started from.
Right. That's exactly right. You're uniquely designed to be the best people. That have nobody on the planet will love that those young humans as much as you. Nobody on the planet will have the built-in DNA capability to understand those humans
Mm-hmm.
as well as you do, because part of it is they're a piece of you. So there is going to be a little piece of that that is super familiar, and also is super true because it is part of you, right? So you are the most qualified, and like it or not, you are the number one educator for that human, and you always have been. People are like, oh, well, I'm not the educator. No, I don't know. I don't. Cool, man. And I had a group of guys yesterday that I got to speak to from somebody else's coaching group. And I said, sounds good. I said, so you're not, you, sir, and the guy's name was Matt as well. I said, so, all right, so Matt, you're not the primary educator. He's like, no, there's no way I'm the primary educator for my kids. I'm like, all right, cool. Sounds good. I said, Matt, you and I are speaking in English right now. I said, what language do your kids speak? I said, I'm assuming they speak Chinese, right? He goes, no, they don't speak Chinese. I said, oh, what do they speak? He said, they speak English. I said, cool. Why do they speak English? Because I speak English. Oh, okay, cool. What school did you send them to learn to speak English? I didn't send them anywhere to speak. They just started speaking. Oh, okay, cool. All right. Do your kids walk? He says, yeah, my kids walk. I said, okay. What school did you send them to teach them how to walk? He said, we didn't teach them. We didn't send them anywhere. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So what you're saying is you were just around your kids all the time. You were showing them examples of this is how somebody talks. This is how somebody walks. And because humans are this amazing machine that we're all designed to just learn constantly. That's what growing is. It's learning. That's it. You're getting more educated the more you are just growing and taking on something new. So because they were around you, they started trying to do the things you were doing. You encouraged the failures. Like they fell on their butt. They didn't just walk right away. They fell. And you went, "Oh, good job." They didn't just speak right away. They said, dad, and they made these noises. And you're like, yeah, that's it, right? You encouraged all those failures. And now all of a sudden, they're doing these amazing things. hey, that's because you're the primary educator and that's how everything else works. It
Yes.
really is that simple, I promise.
It really is. It's hard to understand that when you are vacillating between school and homeschool and how much
Uh-huh.
time would this take and oh my gosh, do I have to have a classroom at home and all of these things. But
That's right.
you do just have to, if you feel it in your heart, you feel called to try something different. I
Hmm.
always tell people, what's the worst that can happen? You go back to what you knew. Okay,
Yeah.
give yourself the out. If you say I can't do this, I'm a semester in, it's crazy. Reach out to some people. If you are going nutso, I guess
Hmm.
you'll take them back to where they were and try that again. Right? You're
Hmm.
never trapped. You're
That's
never
right.
trapped. There's always options.
But school makes you feel that's there is school is designed to make you feel like you're trapped. All right. Because what ends up happening is people go, yeah, but if I go back, what if my kids are now behind?
Oh,
So,
right.
right. So then we have to deconstruct all of that. Behind what? What does that mean? Like, think about like definition of terms. What does that mean? It's not real. This is not that's not a real thing.
The
I'm
benchmarks are
40.
nuts.
It's not a real thing. It's not real. We don't talk about that for adults, so it doesn't make any sense to talk about for young kids either. This is how strong the cult is in our country. If I go up to a young person and somebody sees me go up to a young person and I'm like, hey, what grade are you in? Right, and it's like, you know, I go up to a parent and I go, hey, how old's your kid? Well, they're 10. They're in fifth grade. Okay, cool. Fifth grade. Are they reading at a fifth grade level? Yeah, they're reading at a fifth grade level. Okay, cool. None of that sounds weird. It should, but it doesn't. Here's how I'll show you that it should. If I was like, hey, Jordan, how old are you? And you're like, I'm 35. I'm like, obviously you're 35, right? Great. Sounds good. Are you, so what grade are you in? Are you in 30th grade?
Right.
That sounds weird. And if I say, so do you make money at a 35-year-old level? Are you is your marriage like up at a 35-year-old level? Are you reading at a 35? He'd be like, what are you talking about? It's strange.
Yes.
It's just as strange to ask kids that question. We're just trained that it's not. That's a normal thing. They're not real.
Yes. It's so funny now that when you say that because we'll be out and about and this is our third year homeschooling. And so people will
Yeah.
say, they just, it's normal for people to say, like, what grade are you in? Why aren't you in school
Yeah.
today? And that's
Yep.
every once in a while they'll look at me like, what grade am I in? And I'm like, man, it doesn't matter. Who cares? You're in sixth
Totally.
grade, you're in fourth grade. Like, but
Totally.
and we're kind to people and everything. That it's just like,
Of
wow,
course.
everybody is so conditioned. Like you are this age, you have to be at
No
this grade, you
condition.
have to be at this level.
Totally. We went
It's
to go
nuts.
deliver some food to a local restaurant not too long ago, and I had my son with me. We are carrying some of the food in. He's 7. So the guy let us in, was super kind. He just kind of looked back. He was leading us through the kitchen where he wanted us to go, and he kind of looks back and he goes, "So what grade are you in, buddy?" And I was like, "Oh, 38th." I answered as if he was talking. And the guy's like turns around and just looked at me like I was crazy, and he's like, "Okay, what grade are you in?" Right? And my son's like, we don't do grades. And the guy's like, okay, sounds good. And he didn't know what to do from that,
Oh,
right?
I'm
He's like,
sure.
"Cool, we have crazy people, like, leave the food right here, and then you guys can see yourselves out." It's just like people don't know what to do with it, man.
I know, you're right. We've been conditioned over the years and generations. And so I
Yes,
appreciate the
sir.
message of, break the cycle, have
Mm.
courage, have confidence. You know, you are the primary educators of your kids. You are the ones that are influencing them. And so you don't want to just do something because that's how it's been done in your family for years. Break the mold, try something new, find your community of people who can support you through it. And,
And
it's possible.
see that last part right there is what you said too. I like that. Find the community of people that will support you through it. Because one of the biggest things that I found, right, when I'm talking about people being brave enough to sit with the answers, what I mean by that is logically I can walk almost anybody through. I don't know if I've ever had the experience where from a logical standpoint somebody didn't follow along with what kind of things we're talking about, right? So logically we can walk people through it, but what happens is they start to go, okay, what if? So what if I decided I was going to home educate now? What if I decided that? Well, and then the argument shifts from this is what would happen to my kids. The argument shifts to, well, if I do that, oh, that's going to make it like, what is my spouse going to say? Or, oh, what is that going to do to our income? Or Um, what is my mom gonna think? My mom's gonna think I'm crazy. Like, what is the neighbor next door really hates homeschool because she thinks people and that she's gonna think I'm a really bad parent. And so people start to operate in those kind of things, and then they don't want to move forward
Yes.
because they don't want to deal with all of that.
Yes.
Right? And it's all of a sudden the argument is no longer about is this best for my child? It is this best for my own psyche? And am I going to get, lambasted because I did so? Like, that's the thing is going, okay, you're going to have to face some of that probably, but who are the people that you can surround yourself that will support you? What does
Totally.
that look like? And be ready to have some of the hard conversations because again, at the end of the day, it's you're charged with doing what's best for your young people.
Yes. Yes. Well, there was that period of 2 years where we were sort of locked down, so to speak. That's when we started really kind of binging um,
Yeah,
podcasts, and
yeah,
starting to find people that had similar views that we did during that time period. And that's where we found our community. And they weren't,
mm,
our neighbors, and they weren't some of our greatest
right.
friends or people that we could see. And it still had a great impact on us. So I know that there's a lot of, people can say, man, social media is trash. And how could you find a community online? Well, you can. I mean, you can start, finding your tribe, and these people get together. You and I met at Man Uncaged out in
Yeah,
California. Like that was a
yeah,
real person get together, you know,
right.
that,
Yep, it was a real person get together, right? It was at one of my campuses. It was a real person get together, and I was uh, honored enough to be able to be on stage speaking with a whole bunch of men who, by the way, are dear friends. I still speak to all the time. I still get together with physically all the time, and every single one of them I met because of social media or through social media. Every one of
yes. See?
them. Every one of them. None of them
Yes,
lived in the area, right? None of them lived in that area. I was the
that's
only
right.
one at the campus that lived in that area.
Yes.
We were hosting it at my school. So
Yeah.
every single one of them. And they're, again, dear friends. And I see them physically all of the time.
Yes. Just like anything, it can be used for bad or you can use it for good, right?
Correct. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Correct.
Well, I got to tell you this. Okay, so, and something probably a lot of our audience doesn't know yet either because it's still new is that, our son Parker, he's our oldest, so he's 17. Then I have an 11-year-old son, Lincoln, and then Annie, and she is 9, Spitfire. Um,
Nice. Like her mom.
yeah, that's right. And Parker has been in school, so we drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. Like we started him in school when he was 18 months old. Okay,
Hmm.
so and he's been a very independent young man since he. I mean, everybody always called him, a little man because
Hmm.
he's just had this
Hmm.
business-oriented mind. He's just been very driven, whatever. And so he was in school, and we were thinking, oh, his senior year, at this private school he's going to take all the classes he can because he's thinking about college. And again we started feeding Parker a couple of these podcasts. And then he joined your Apogee Strong
Hmm.
coaching program. And Josh and I had met you. We were like, we trust this.
Hmm.
I asked you a couple questions at the beginning, like, how do you handle these certain situations with teenage boys? What's your take on this? You were kind
Hmm.
enough to respond back and say, here's how we would handle these types of things.
Yeah.
But then he started getting into this coaching and listening to, Bedros Koulian and Ryan Mickler and you and some of these other male influencers who were talking about being leaders and taking personal accountability and being responsible for your health and your
Mm.
well-being, even if you're 16 and 17 and still living at home. Like you got to start then or earlier.
Yep.
And something started happening for him. We just noticed that he started taking more control over, his what he was consuming physically with food, how
Hmm.
often he would go to the gym. I mean, he was tearing it up. Like, can I go to Orange Theory, 6 times a week, and then I'm going to do this, and
Hmm.
he just started becoming his own person and taking control of things. And it was beautiful. And Josh and I are going, is this anything we had anything to do with? I don't think so. I mean, there's a combination, right? Josh
Of
takes
course.
very good care of himself. So
Sure.
we try to model this stuff for him on the regular because we're working on ourselves.
course.
But this program, and he didn't participate on a deep level, because a lot of times, what you were doing with your coaching program was having young men, in a Zoom group with an older leader who was
Mm.
imparting some knowledge on them and sharing some experiences or whatever. And Parker was at school during that time. So
Yep.
the way he was able to engage your program was really simply through the book list that you
Yeah.
recommended. And you said,
Yeah.
man, if you guys do nothing else, read these, I think 12
Hmm.
books, one a month or whatever. He just started, he wasn't even a reader before this, Matt. It's nuts. He didn't even like to read. He started diving into this because these were books of real men doing real things. He could
Mm.
relate. It wasn't another, study book,
Yep.
just imparting knowledge, but it was sharing real wisdom,
I love it.
you
Oh, I
know?
love it. I love it. I mean, that's it. What we use in the men's program too. We've come to, like, we use the mentors, the fact that these guys are going to sit down with a bunch of, men that they know, guys they've seen in movies, and guys they've seen in, professional athletes, and guys they listen to on the radio, and guys that they see on social media, and guys that, have this background of like, oh, this guy was a Navy SEAL and a CIA operator. Like, whoa, like we use all these things. It's the bait and switch, man. Is there value that comes from that? Of course, there's value that comes from that. You're talking directly to these guys. You're asking them questions. They're giving you honest answers, and there's a lot of wisdom that's shared. Ton of value in that. But when you're doing the readings, but when you're taking on the projects and challenges that have been laid out in an experiential fashion, and you're
Mm-hmm.
pouring into the work, that's the transformation comes. The majority is it from it's from that.
It
It's
is.
from
It's,
doing the work, right? And the mentors end up being this thing that's like, oh, it's inspiration on the side, and that's
yes.
great, and that helps. But it's inspiring me to now go do this work and tackle this roadmap that's in front of me. And hey, by the way, that ends up creating the real transformation.
Yes, totally. Well, that happened for Parker, and this was crazy because I think it was summertime, early in the summer, maybe May, towards the end of his school year, junior year. And he said, "Hey, guys, we've kind of trained our kids that if they want to make a big change, or they're proposing something like flying for the first time when they're 13 and 9, without any parents, we're like, you
Mm.
get the idea. You just have to map it out. Give us a presentation, show us
Right.
everything you know about this. If you present a legitimate plan, we won't
Yeah,
say no." So
that's right.
we Parker said, "You know what? I think I want to homeschool for my senior year." And we just about fell over because we just thought, this guy is just different. He's a lot older than our other kids. He has, we've done things differently with him, so we didn't imagine he'd ever want this. And he's doing it right now. He's
That's awesome.
doing it. He's like, the other night at dinner, we're sitting down, we're eating some salmon and asparagus, his favorite meal. He cooked it. And he says, "I just got to tell you guys something. I think making the decision to homeschool my senior year was the single most important decision I've ever made in my life. And it's the
Oh,
best
it's
one."
awesome.
I mean, I was about to cry right there at the table. I was like, man, we could have shut you down. We could have been like, no, that doesn't make logical sense. You have
Yep.
beautiful transcripts that are going to look so good for the colleges, and I'm going to
Yep.
sign your, high school diploma. What? No. But we were just like, wow, okay, this is something on your heart. You have never led yourself astray, son. Like, you've made mistakes. Trust me.
Of course.
But it was like we could tell this was something he was ready and needed to be given the opportunity to try.
Oh, I love it, man. That's nothing better than stories like that. And bravo to you guys too, because that does, yeah, there's influences that come from other places, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what you do before they do what you say. You guys have had to have led more often than not for him to get to not just making the decision, but for having the awareness of how important that decision is too. So bravo to you guys
Oh,
as well. I love that, man. I love to hear that. So good.
this is exciting. It's just super,
So good.
super exciting. So tell us, like, if you're a parent of, young boys, young men, how do these parents like get connected with your coaching programs? And then also tell us a little bit about your dad coaching program.
Yeah, it's awesome. People can reach out to me directly. I mean, that's fine. Maybe you can just shoot me an email if you want. It's Matt at Apogee Strong. It may take me a couple days to get back because I usually have a couple days a week that I'll batch all my emails, and so it may take me a couple days, but you can reach out there. On Instagram, it's at Apogee Program, and then we'll have everything: young men's, men's, women's, eventual young women's, home education, 501c3, our foundation, and our school launches will ultimately all be underneath the apogeestrong.com website. We're working on putting it all in one place right now, so it's not at 48 different landing pages, which is kind of the way it's been working out, which is fine. And then on the dad side, it's a very similar model. We had so many dads who were reaching out going, "Hey, can I jump on these calls? I'm like, you know what, man? Tim and I were like, well, we need to do the same thing, but it's more intense. So it's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing as the Young Men's Program, similar, but more intense. So every month there is a different focus, a different theme for the men. We dive into their personal psychology, getting them to unravel the victim mindset and the stories they're telling themselves about the stories they're telling themselves, and building out what Plato calls the forms. It's like an ideal version of you as the husband, as the father, as the entrepreneur, as the guy at the gym, as like we build all of this stuff out. We start diving into time and energy management and getting a chief definite aim. Take a look at physical health, spiritual health, emotional health, things with the wife, things with the kids. Start diving into understanding. So just like school is a specific game that keeps you from education, we start diving into the concept of money. Most people operate in one construct of, well, here's how I make money. I'm either a W-2 or I own a business here, and they have a very basic 1040 system structure. Most people don't even know that there's a completely separate legal way to operate your finances, a 1041 system. And hey, by the way, there's no taxes in this one. So like we walk the dads through all of this so they understand all of these things, right? So each month has a different focus. Each month also has different readings. Each month has 5 challenges that they're diving into with all the other men around them, but then they're also placed in smaller units. So we have the big mentor call every week. They have the smaller units. They're also able to attend, not speak at, but attend the young men's mentorship calls. And then we do live, meetups and live events as well. So it's like the Young Men's Program, but on steroids.
Oh, I love it. I love hearing that this is happening. I knew when I left that conference, I was, by the way, the only female at the Man
Yes, you were.
Uncaged conference. And I was
Yes,
kind
you
of
were.
hiding the corner going, I didn't mean to be this
Awesome.
person, but I'm here and I'm going
Oh,
to just
yeah.
embrace it. It was so encouraging and empowering to see so many men, so many great leaders like yourself, just make it all these spin-offs of coaching, so
Mhm.
that you can just serve the masses.
And what it really is, and people are like, okay, so wait, are you in education or are you in coaching? Or are you in, well, hold on. No. They're all the same. They're all education. Every single bit of it is education, right? It's education for young men. It's not school, but again, education and school are the same.
Yes.
School is a religion itself, taught to perpetuate itself. Education is personalized growth, it's personal development, right? So, personal development, education for young men, personal development, education for the dads, for the moms, for the young ladies, for the families, and then the K through 12 campuses that are bringing it all together. So, you got all of these fingers on the same hand of education that's teaching people how to, as a family, grasp sovereignty and freedom. That's the mission.
I love it. I love it. That is a great way to wrap up this episode, man. I mean, you are preaching to the choir. We're over here in your corner just going, yes, absolutely. We are all about building up parents, strengthening marriages and helping to raise kids of character. And it doesn't happen in a bubble, it doesn't happen in a box. It's
Mhm.
all very unique to every family, but there is a system and a framework that works,
Mhm.
and I appreciate you bringing yours on the show today and just empowering us and enlightening us with what is possible.
Honor is mine. Thank you for what you're doing as well. Like you said, same team, right? Same team, same mission. So any way that I can serve, just say the word.
Thank you so much, Matt. Parents, if you are interested in what Matt's talking about, all the links are in our show notes. So be sure to click the links to jump over to Apogee Strong so that you can, make sure that you're aware of new coaching programs he's launching. We fully support what he's doing. my own family has been part of what he's doing. So I would never serve you up something that I thought was trash or, mediocre. We're going for the good stuff here. So we are also launching a program for married couples coming up. So it's launching in November, going to be a quick 6-week course, and it's just going to bless a lot of people. So watch your emails for that too, guys. Every Tuesday when you get our email newsletter, you will find all kinds of links to what's coming up, and you don't want to miss it. So thanks again, Matt, for blessing our community, and we look forward to maybe another episode in the future, if you wouldn't mind.
Would be my honor.
Awesome. Thanks, friends, and we'll catch you on another episode of the Families of Character show real soon.